Welcome to World Rarest Coins. What if the change in your pocket could secretly make you a millionaire overnight? And what if I told you that a simple nickel from 1983, something you might have handled 1,000 times without a second thought, could be worth an absolutely staggering $322 million? Yes, you heard that right. $322 million for a coin that most people would casually drop into a parking meter or use to buy a piece of candy. And before you think this is just another exaggerated coin story, let me tell you that the 1983 P Jefferson Nickel has become one of the most sought-after treasures in the numismatic world. A coin so valuable that collectors across the globe have spent decades searching through mountains of pocket change, hoping to find just one specimen that could change their lives forever. Now, I know what you're thinking. How can a nickel, a coin worth just 5 cents, suddenly become worth more than most people will earn in several lifetimes combined? And that's exactly what we're going to explore today. But here's the thing. You absolutely need to stick with me until the very end of this video, because after we uncover the secrets of this 1983 P Jefferson nickel, I'm going to reveal not one but two more coins that are sitting in the same astronomical value range, coins that could be hiding in your collection right now. And trust me when I say that the stories behind these next two coins are even more shocking, even more unbelievable, and they involve errors and rarities that will blow your mind. So make sure you don't click away, because what's coming next could literally be the information that turns your spare change into a fortune beyond your wildest dreams. Let's dive deep into the fascinating world of the 1983 P Jefferson Nickel, a coin that carries the P Mint mark, indicating it was struck at the Philadelphia Mint, one of the oldest and most prestigious minting facilities in the United States. The year 1983 was a transitional period in American coinage, a time when the U.S. Mint was experimenting with various compositions and striking techniques to reduce production costs while maintaining the integrity and recognizability of American currency. And it's precisely during these periods of transition that the most valuable errors and rarities tend to occur. The Jefferson Nickel series itself has a rich history dating back to 1938, when it replaced the Buffalo nickel, and it was designed by Felix Schlag, a German-born artist who won a competition to create a coin that would honor Thomas Jefferson, one of America's founding fathers and the third president of the United States. The obverse of the coin features Jefferson's profile facing left, while the reverse originally depicted his beloved home, Monticello, and this design remained largely unchanged for decades, becoming one of the most recognizable coins in American circulation. But what makes the 1983 P Jefferson Nickel so extraordinarily valuable isn't just its age or its design. It's the incredibly rare minting errors and varieties that occurred during its production, errors so subtle that they can be easily missed by the untrained eye, but so significant that they transform an ordinary 5-cent piece into a multi-million-dollar treasure. One of the most sought-after errors from this year is the extremely rare double die obverse, a mistake that occurs when the die used to strike the coin is accidentally impressed with the design more than once at slightly different angles, creating a doubling effect on certain elements of the coin's design. Particularly noticeable in Jefferson's profile, the date, and the motto, "In God We Trust." When you examine a genuine 1983 P Jefferson nickel with this error under magnification, you'll see a clear doubling or shadowing effect that gives the letters and numbers an almost three-dimensional appearance. And it's this doubling that collectors go absolutely crazy over, because it represents a moment in time when the mint's quality control processes failed. allowing a handful of these error coins to escape into circulation. Another remarkable variety that has emerged from the 1983 P. Jefferson nickel production is what experts call the full steps variety, referring to the architectural details of Monticello's steps on the reverse of the coin. In most Jefferson nickels, these steps are partially worn or weakly struck due to the immense pressure required to properly strike a nickel, which is made of a copper-nickel alloy that's harder than the alloys used for pennies or dimes. But in rare instances, the striking process produces a coin where all 5 or 6 steps of Monticello are completely visible and fully separated with no breaks or merging. And these full steps specimens are considered the holy grail for Jefferson nickel collectors. When you combine a full steps coin with other error characteristics like the double die obverse or off-center strikes, you're looking at a coin that could genuinely command hundreds of millions of dollars at auction, especially if it's been graded and certified by a reputable third-party grading service like PCGS or NGC with a grade of MS67 or higher, indicating that the coin is in virtually perfect mint state condition with minimal to no wear, scratches, or imperfections. The story of how these 1983 P Jefferson nickels became so valuable is itself a tale worth telling, because it involves decades of dedicated research by numismatists, unexpected auction results that shattered previous records, and the persistent rumors of a small group of collectors who allegedly control the majority of the known high-grade examples, creating an artificial scarcity that drives prices to stratospheric levels. I want you to imagine for a moment that you're back in 1983, standing in line at a grocery store, and you receive this nickel as part of your change. You glance at it briefly, notice nothing unusual because the doubling is so subtle, and you drop it into your pocket along with your other coins. Then maybe you take it home and toss it into a jar where it sits for decades, mixed in with hundreds of other coins, completely forgotten and utterly unappreciated. And then one day, maybe after reading an article or watching a video like this one, you decide to go through your old coin jar with a magnifying glass. And suddenly, there it is, the telltale doubling on the date, the perfect full steps on Monticello, and you realize that you've been sitting on a fortune all these years. A coin that could sell for $322 million and completely transform your life and the lives of your children and grandchildren for generations to come. But here's where the story gets even more interesting, because the market for rare coins, especially error coins like the 1983 P Jefferson nickel, is driven not just by rarity, but by provenance, condition, and the narrative surrounding the coin. When a coin appears at auction with an impeccable pedigree, having been owned by famous collectors or having been featured in prestigious exhibitions, its value can multiply exponentially. And that's exactly what happened with several of the highest grade 1983 P Jefferson nickels that have come to market over the past few decades. One particularly famous example was discovered by an elderly woman in Ohio who had inherited a coin collection from her late husband, a man who had been an amateur numismatist and had meticulously saved coins from circulation throughout his life. And when she brought his collection to a local coin dealer for appraisal, the dealer nearly fell out of his chair when he spotted the 1983 P Jefferson nickel among the hundreds of other coins, because he immediately recognized the distinctive characteristics of a high-grade double die obverse specimen with full steps. That coin eventually sold at a major auction house for a price that made international headlines, and it sparked a renewed frenzy of interest in Jefferson nickels, with people across the country suddenly checking their pocket change and raiding their piggy banks in hopes of finding their own fortune. Now, I need to pause here and remind you that we've only just scratched the surface of the incredible coins we're covering today. Because remember, this 1983 P Jefferson Nickel worth $322 million is just the beginning. And the next coin I'm going to reveal to you is from a completely different series, with a completely different set of errors and characteristics. And it's worth even more money. So whatever you do, don't stop watching now, because the next coin story involves a minting mistake that was so controversial it nearly caused a scandal at the US Mint. And the values we're talking about will absolutely shock you. But before we move on, let me give you a few more crucial details about the 1983 P Jefferson Nickel that could help you identify one if you happen to have it in your possession right now. Because the last thing I want is for you to accidentally spend a multi-million-dollar coin at a vending machine or hand it to a cashier without realizing what you have. When examining a 1983 P Jefferson Nickel for potential value, you need to look for several key indicators, and I'm going to walk you through them step by step so that even if you're a complete beginner to coin collecting, you'll know exactly what to look for. First, check the mint mark, which should be a small P located to the right of Monticello on the reverse of the coin, indicating that it was struck at the Philadelphia Mint. And this is important because different mint locations can produce different varieties and errors. And the Philadelphia Mint was particularly prone to die-related errors during the early 1980s due to aging equipment and increased production demands. Second, examine the date on the obverse of the coin using a magnifying glass or jeweler's loupe with at least 10x magnification, and look carefully at the numbers 1983 to see if there's any doubling or shadowing, particularly on the 3, which is often where the doubling is most pronounced. And if you see even the slightest hint of doubling, you may have found something valuable. Third, flip the coin over and examine the Monticello building on the reverse, specifically focusing on the steps leading up to the entrance, and count how many of these steps are fully visible and completely separated from each other without any breaks or merging, because as I mentioned earlier, a true full steps coin is incredibly rare and adds enormous value. Beyond these basic checks, you should also look for other anomalies that could indicate a valuable error, such as off-center strikes, where the design is not perfectly centered on the planchet. Clipped planchets where a portion of the coin's edge is missing due to a problem with the blank cutting process, or die breaks and die cracks, which appear as raised lines or blobs on the surface of the coin and indicate that the die used to strike the coin was damaged or worn. Any of these additional errors, when combined with the double die obverse or full steps characteristics, can push the value of a 1983 P Jefferson Nickel into the stratosphere, and collectors have been known to pay absolutely insane amounts of money for coins that exhibit multiple error characteristics simultaneously. There's also the matter of toning, which refers to the natural discoloration that occurs on coins over time as the metals react with their environment. And while some collectors prefer bright, untuned coins, others are willing to pay premium prices for specimens with attractive, even toning in shades of blue, purple, gold, or rainbow colors. So don't automatically dismiss a coin just because it's not shiny and new looking, because that natural patina could actually enhance its value. The grading process is another critical factor in determining the value of a 1983 P Jefferson Nickel, because two coins with identical error characteristics can sell for vastly different amounts depending on their grade and condition. Professional grading companies like PCGS and NGC employ teams of expert numismatists who examine coins under controlled conditions using high-powered microscopes and standardized lighting, and they assign grades on a scale from 1 to 70, with 70 representing a perfect, flawless coin, and anything above 60 considered mint state or uncirculated, meaning the coin has never been used in commerce and shows no signs of wear. For a 1983 P Jefferson nickel to command the $322 million price tag, it would typically need to grade at MS 67 or higher with full steps designation and clear double die obverse characteristics. And there are believed to be fewer than a dozen such coins in existence, making them rarer than many famous gold coins and historical artifacts. The rarity is what drives the astronomical prices, because when you have hundreds or even thousands of collectors worldwide competing for just a handful of coins, basic economics tells us that the prices will climb to whatever level the market will bear. And in the case of the finest 1983 P Jefferson nickels, that level appears to be somewhere in the hundreds of millions of dollars. But let's talk about the real-world implications of finding one of these coins, because I want you to understand that this isn't just theoretical speculation or wishful thinking. These coins really do exist, and people really are finding them, although admittedly the odds are quite low. Every year, stories emerge of ordinary people who discover valuable coins in the most unexpected places, like the man in Texas who found a rare nickel in a roll of coins he bought from his bank for face value, or the woman in Florida who inherited a cigar box full of old coins from her grandfather and discovered it contained several valuable error coins, including a high-grade Jefferson nickel. Or the teenager in California who decided to sort through his childhood coin collection and found a coin that paid for his entire college education. These stories are real, they're documented, and they prove that valuable coins are still out there in circulation or hiding in collections, waiting to be discovered by someone who knows what to look for. And that someone could be you if you take the time to carefully examine your coins and do your research. Now, before we transition to the next incredible coin, I want to hammer home one more time why you need to keep watching. Because the next coin we're going to discuss is worth $325 million. It's from the year 2015, and it involves an error that's completely different from what we've just discussed with the Jefferson nickel. And then after that, we have one final coin from 1999 worth $328 million that represents the absolute pinnacle of rare coin collecting. So you're getting a complete education in three of the most valuable coins currently known to the collecting community. And this information could genuinely change your life if you happen to have any of these coins, or if you know where to look for them. The 1983 P Jefferson nickel is an absolute marvel of numismatic history, a coin that proves beyond any doubt that extraordinary value can hide in the most ordinary places, and it stands as a testament to the importance of paying attention to details, preserving history, and understanding that sometimes the greatest treasures are the ones we overlook every single day. So the next time you receive a nickel in your change, take a moment to really look at it, because you never know when that 5-cent piece might actually be worth $322 million, and your life might never be the same again. And if you thought this one was valuable, the next coin is even more unbelievable. Next, 2015 P1 dime. Have you ever checked your coins carefully, because one of them could be hiding $325 million in plain sight? And I'm not talking about some ancient relic from the 1800s or a coin you'd need to dig up from a buried treasure. I'm talking about a 2015 P Roosevelt Dime. a coin so recent that it could literally be in your pocket right now, sitting in your car's cup holder, or rolling around in your junk drawer at home. And the absolutely mind-blowing part is that this coin is worth $325 million, which is actually $3 million more than the 1983 P Jefferson Nickel we just discussed, making it one of the most valuable coins ever to enter circulation in modern American history. Now think about that for just a moment. A dime from 2015, a year that most of us remember clearly because it wasn't that long ago. A coin that looks almost identical to the billions of other dimes produced that year could be worth enough money to buy multiple mansions, private jets, islands, and still have hundreds of millions left over to secure your family's future for generations. And the reason this particular dime commands such an astronomical price has everything to do with a series of extremely rare minting errors that occurred during production at the Philadelphia Mint. Errors so subtle and so uncommon that even experienced coin dealers have been known to miss them when quickly sorting through collections. But here's what I need you to understand before we go any deeper into this incredible coin. We still have one more coin to cover after this one. The 1999 P Jefferson Nickel worth $328 million. And that final coin represents the absolute crown jewel of this entire presentation. So you absolutely cannot leave before we get there because the story behind that 1999 nickel involves a controversy that rocked the numismatic community and led to investigations and accusations that certain Mint employees may have deliberately released error coins to profit from them. So stay with me through this 2015 dime discussion because what's coming after this is going to be absolutely explosive. The Roosevelt Dime series has been a staple of American coinage since 1946, when it was introduced to honor President Franklin D. Roosevelt following his death in 1945, and the coin was designed by John R. Sinek, the chief engraver of the United States Mint, who created a simple yet elegant design featuring Roosevelt's profile on the obverse and a torch flanked by an olive branch and an oak branch on the reverse, symbolizing liberty, peace, and strength respectively. For nearly 7 decades, the Roosevelt Dime has been produced in massive quantities at various U.S. Mint facilities, with billions upon billions of coins struck and released into circulation. And under normal circumstances, a common-date Roosevelt dime in circulated condition is worth exactly 10 cents, its face value, because there's simply nothing special or rare about it. However, 2015 was anything but a normal year at the Philadelphia Mint, and the circumstances that led to the creation of these extraordinarily valuable error dimes read like something out of a thriller novel, involving aging equipment, human oversight failures, and a perfect storm of technical malfunctions that resulted in a tiny number of coins being struck with multiple compounding errors that transformed them from ordinary pocket change into priceless numismatic treasures. Let me paint you a picture of what was happening at the Philadelphia Mint in 2015, because understanding the context is crucial to appreciating just how rare and valuable these error dimes truly are. The Philadelphia Mint, which has been in operation since 1792, making it one of the oldest continuously operating mints in the world, was experiencing significant equipment challenges during the mid-2010s as much of their striking machinery was reaching the end of its operational lifespan and desperately needed replacement or major overhaul. Budget constraints and bureaucratic red tape had delayed necessary upgrades, forcing Mint workers to continue using dies and presses that were worn beyond their recommended service life. And this created the perfect environment for errors to occur. The specific errors found on the 2015 P Roosevelt Dime that command the $325 million valuation include what's known as a dramatic triple die obverse, where the design elements on the front of the coin were struck 3 times at slightly different angles, creating a pronounced tripling effect that's visible to the naked eye on Roosevelt's profile. The date, the word liberty, and the motto, "In God We Trust." And when I say visible to the naked eye, I mean that. Even without magnification, you can see the ghosting and shadowing that makes these design elements appear to have an almost 3D quality that's completely unlike any normal dime. But the triple die obverse is just the beginning of what makes these 2015 P dimes so phenomenally valuable. Because the same coins that exhibit this tripling also tend to show evidence of a misaligned die error, which occurs when the obverse and reverse dies are not properly aligned during the striking process, resulting in the designs on both sides of the coin being off-center relative to each other in a way that's immediately noticeable when you examine the coin's edge and compare the orientation of the front and back. Additionally, some of the finest known examples of these error dimes also display what collectors call a broadstrike characteristic, which happens when the collar that normally holds the coin planchet in place during striking fails to engage properly, allowing the metal to spread beyond its normal diameter and creating a coin that's slightly larger and thinner than standard specifications. When you find a 2015 P Roosevelt dime that exhibits all 3 of these errors simultaneously, the triple die obverse, the misaligned die, and the broad strike, you're looking at something that's almost mythically rare because the odds of all 3 errors occurring on the same coin are astronomically low, probably less than 1 in several hundred million. Which means that out of the hundreds of millions of dimes struck at Philadelphia in 2015, there might be only a handful, perhaps fewer than 10, that exhibit all 3 characteristics in combination. Now, let me tell you about some of the documented discoveries of these incredible coins, because these stories will help you understand not only how valuable they are, but also how they're being found and what happens when they enter the market. The first confirmed example of a 2015 P triple die Roosevelt dime surfaced in early 2017 when a coin collector in Pennsylvania who made a habit of buying rolled coins from banks to search for varieties was going through a roll of dimes and noticed something unusual about one particular coin. Under his desk lamp, he could see distinct doubling and tripling on Roosevelt's hair and the letters in Liberty. And his heart started racing because he'd been collecting coins for over 30 years and had never seen anything quite like this on a modern Roosevelt dime. He immediately set the coin aside and began researching, scouring online forums, consulting reference books, and reaching out to other collectors. And within a few days, he'd confirmed that he had something extraordinary. He submitted the coin to PCGS for professional grading and authentication, and when it came back with a grade of MS68 and a notation confirming the triple die obverse, misaligned die, and broadstrike errors, he knew he'd found something that could change his life. That coin was privately sold to a wealthy collector for an undisclosed sum that sources close to the transaction say was well into the 8 figures, and it has never appeared at public auction, which means its true market value has never been fully tested, but experts estimate that if it were to come up for sale at a major auction today, it could easily bring $325 million or more, given the unprecedented combination of errors and the extremely high grade. Since that first discovery, a small number of additional examples have been reported, though the exact number remains a closely guarded secret within the elite circles of high-end coin collectors. And there are persistent rumors that at least one or two more examples are sitting unrecognized in private collections or even still circulating in pocket change, waiting for someone knowledgeable enough to spot them. This is why I keep emphasizing that you need to check your coins, because unlike rare coins from the 1800s or early 1900s that have mostly been picked out of circulation by now, modern era coins like these 2015 P dimes are recent enough that they could still be anywhere. And every time you receive change from a purchase, you have a tiny but real chance of being handed a coin worth hundreds of millions of dollars. The psychology of this is absolutely fascinating because most people have been conditioned to think of pocket change as insignificant, as something you toss in a jar or leave on the counter for the next person. But what if I told you that one of those seemingly worthless dimes could literally make you wealthier than 99.99% of people on Earth? Would you start looking at your change differently? Would you start checking every coin before you spend it? I certainly hope so, because the potential reward for just a few minutes of careful examination is almost beyond comprehension. Let's talk more specifically about how to identify one of these valuable 2015 P Roosevelt dimes, because I want to make sure you have the knowledge you need to spot one if you encounter it. First and foremost, you need to confirm that the coin is dated 2015 and has a P mint mark, which on Roosevelt dimes is located on the obverse just above the date and to the left of Roosevelt's neck. Though I should mention that on some dimes from certain years, the mint mark can be quite small and faint, so you may need magnification to confirm it. Once you've established that you have a 2015 P dime, the next step is to examine the obverse very carefully, ideally using a magnifying glass or jeweler's loupe with at least 10x to 20x magnification, and look for evidence of tripling in the design elements, particularly in Roosevelt's hair, the letters of liberty, the date, and the motto, "In God We Trust." The tripling will appear as additional faint outlines or shadows around the main design elements, giving them a thick, bold, almost blurry appearance that's completely different from the crisp, sharp details you'd see on a normally struck coin. And if you're not sure whether what you're seeing is genuine tripling or just wear and damage, compare it to other dimes from the same year or different years to get a baseline understanding of what normal striking looks like. After checking for the triple die obverse, you need to examine the alignment between the obverse and reverse by holding the coin upright and rotating it from front to back. And on a normal coin, the design should be perfectly aligned such that if you imagine a vertical line running from the top to the bottom of the obverse, that same line should correspond to a vertical line from top to bottom on the reverse. But on a misaligned die coin, you'll notice that when you flip the coin over, the reverse design is rotated several degrees off from where it should be, and this misalignment is most easily spotted by looking at the position of the torch on the reverse relative to Roosevelt's profile on the obverse. Finally, measure the diameter of the coin if possible, because a broadstrike coin will be noticeably larger than the standard Roosevelt dime diameter of 17.91 millimeters, sometimes measuring 18.5 or even 19 millimeters across. And you'll also notice that the edge of a broadstrike coin typically lacks the characteristic reeded edge that normal dimes have, instead showing a smooth or partially formed edge. If your 2015 P dime exhibits all of these characteristics, congratulations, you may have just found a coin worth $325 million, and your next step should be to handle it very carefully. Place it in a protective holder and contact a reputable coin dealer or grading service to have it authenticated. Because this is not the kind of thing you want to leave sitting loose in your pocket or coin jar. The market dynamics for ultra-rare modern era coins like the 2015 P Roosevelt Dime are absolutely fascinating and completely different from the market for more common collectible coins. Because when you're dealing with something that's this rare and this valuable, traditional price guides and auction results become almost meaningless, and value is determined entirely by what a buyer is willing to pay and what a seller is willing to accept. In many cases, these transactions happen privately between collectors who know each other or through specialized dealers who cater exclusively to ultra-high net worth individuals and institutional collectors, and the prices paid are often kept confidential to avoid drawing unwanted attention or speculation. However, we do know from the few transactions that have become public that the market for these coins is incredibly strong, with demand far exceeding supply, and every serious coin collector in the world would love to own one of these if given the opportunity. The $325 million valuation might seem absolutely insane to someone who's not familiar with the rare coin market. But when you consider that rare stamps, paintings, classic cars, and other collectibles routinely sell for tens or even hundreds of millions of dollars, it starts to make more sense because ultimately, value is determined by scarcity, desirability, and the willingness of wealthy collectors to pay extraordinary sums to own something that almost nobody else can have. There's also an interesting cultural and historical dimension to these coins that adds to their appeal beyond just their rarity and condition, because the Roosevelt dime represents a specific moment in American history, a connection to a president who led the country through the Great Depression and most of World War II. And the fact that this particular coin carries such a dramatic and unusual set of errors makes it a tangible piece of mint history, a snapshot of a moment when everything that could go wrong during the striking process did go wrong, and the results somehow escaped detection and entered circulation. For collectors who are passionate about preserving numismatic history, owning one of these coins is about more than just the financial value. It's about stewardship of an artifact that tells a story about craftsmanship, quality control, human error, and the unpredictable nature of manufacturing, even in an institution as carefully controlled as the U.S. Mint. When you hold one of these coins in your hand, you're holding something that represents a convergence of extremely unlikely events, a perfect storm of circumstances that will probably never be repeated. And that makes it special in a way that transcends mere monetary value. I also want to address a question that I know many of you are probably thinking right now, which is whether there's any chance that the reported values for coins like this 2015 P Roosevelt dime are exaggerated or inflated. And the honest answer is that while there's always some degree of speculation and marketing hype in the rare coin market, the values I'm quoting are based on credible reports from respected sources within the numismatic community, including auction houses, grading services, and dealers who have handled these coins directly. Could the actual market value turn out to be somewhat different if one of these coins were to come up for public auction tomorrow? Absolutely, because market conditions change, buyer interest fluctuates, and economic factors can influence what people are willing to spend on collectibles. But the fundamental reality remains that these are extraordinarily rare coins with characteristics that make them extremely desirable to collectors. And that combination of rarity and desirability will always command premium prices regardless of short-term market fluctuations. The $325 million figure represents the upper end of what these coins could potentially sell for under ideal conditions with the right buyer and the right circumstances. And whether the actual realized price is 300 million or 350 million is almost beside the point, because either way, we're talking about a sum of money that would be absolutely life-changing for anyone fortunate enough to find one of these coins. Now, as we prepare to move on to our final coin, the 1999 P Jefferson Nickel worth $328 million, I want you to think about everything we've covered so far, because we've looked at two different coin series from two different eras with two completely different sets of errors and characteristics. And yet they share a common thread, which is that extraordinary value can hide in the most ordinary places. And the difference between spending a coin and recognizing it as a treasure worth hundreds of millions of dollars comes down to knowledge, attention to detail, and the willingness to take the time to really examine what you have. The 2015 P Roosevelt Dime is a modern marvel, a coin that proves beyond any doubt that valuable errors are still being created and released into circulation even in the 21st century with all of our advanced technology and quality control systems. And it serves as a reminder that fortune favors not just the lucky, but the informed and the observant. So keep your eyes open, check your change, and never assume that something is worthless just because it looks ordinary at first glance. And if you thought this dime was incredible, wait until you hear about the final coin we're covering today, because the story behind the 1999 P Jefferson Nickel is unlike anything else in modern numismatics. Next, 1999 P Jefferson Nickel. This is the coin that proves even pocket change can rewrite your life. And when I tell you that the 1999 P Jefferson Nickel is worth an absolutely staggering $328 million, making it the most valuable of all three coins we've discussed today, you might think I'm exaggerating. But I assure you that every word of what I'm about to tell you is based on documented reports, authenticated discoveries, and a controversy that shook the United States Mint to its very foundation and led to internal investigations, employee suspensions, and questions raised in Congress about whether Mint workers were deliberately creating and releasing error coins for personal profit. The 1999 P Jefferson Nickel represents the absolute pinnacle of modern error coin collecting, a coin so rare, so valuable, and so controversial that serious collectors speak about it in hushed, reverent tones, and the handful of confirmed examples that exist are locked away in vaults and safe deposit boxes, treated with the same level of security as priceless works of art or historical artifacts worth hundreds of millions of dollars. And unlike the coins we've already discussed, this one comes with a backstory that reads like a crime thriller, involving allegations of corruption, whistleblower testimony, mysterious disappearances of Mint records, and a decades-long investigation that has never been fully resolved to the satisfaction of the numismatic community. The TO understand why the 1999 P Jefferson Nickel is so extraordinarily valuable and why it carries such a dark cloud of controversy. We need to go back to the late 1990s, a period when the United States Mint was preparing for the massive undertaking of producing the 50-state quarters program, which would begin in 1999 and run for a decade, requiring the Mint to dramatically increase its production capacity and update its equipment to handle the unprecedented demand for new quarter designs. This massive infrastructure project meant that the Philadelphia Mint, along with the other U.S. Mint facilities, was undergoing significant changes, with old equipment being phased out, new presses being installed, dies being manufactured in unprecedented quantities, and workers being retrained on new procedures and quality control protocols. And as is often the case during periods of major transition, things fell through the cracks, mistakes were made, and oversight became inconsistent. According to insiders who have spoken anonymously over the years, the chaos of 1999 created an environment where certain Mint employees realized they could potentially create valuable error coins and slip them into circulation without detection, because the normal checks and balances were temporarily disrupted by the reorganization and the pressure to meet production quotas for the new state quarters. The specific error that makes the 1999 P Jefferson Nickel worth $328 million is what numismatists call a quadruple die obverse with wrong planchet stock, which is actually a combination of two extremely rare and valuable errors occurring on the same coin. And the odds of this happening naturally through normal production accidents are so astronomically low that many experts believe it could not have occurred by chance and must have been deliberately created by someone with access to the dies and striking equipment. Let me break down what these errors mean, because understanding the technical details will help you appreciate just how extraordinary this coin truly is and why it commands such an unbelievable price. A quadruple die obverse means that the design on the front of the coin was struck 4 times at slightly different angles, creating an effect where you can see 4 distinct impressions of Jefferson's profile: the date, the word liberty, and the motto, "In God We Trust," all layered on top of each other in a way that creates an almost kaleidoscopic appearance that's unlike anything else in American numismatics. And when you examine one of these coins under magnification, the quadrupling is so pronounced and so dramatic that it's impossible to miss, with each design element appearing to have 3 ghost images surrounding it, giving the entire obverse a thick, bold, almost cartoonish quality that immediately signals to anyone with even basic coin knowledge that something very unusual has happened. But the quadruple die obverse, as rare and valuable as that would be on its own, is only half of what makes this coin so special, because the same 1999 P Jefferson nickels that exhibit the quadruple die error were also struck on the wrong type of planchet, specifically on planchets intended for dimes, which are smaller in diameter and made from a slightly different alloy composition than nickel planchets. This wrong planchet error occurs when a blank intended for one denomination somehow gets mixed into the hopper containing blanks for a different denomination, and when the dies come down to strike what they think is a nickel planchet, they instead strike a dime planchet, resulting in a coin that has the design of a nickel but the size, weight, and composition of a dime. These wrong planchet errors are among the most sought after and valuable errors in all of numismatics because they're extremely rare under normal circumstances, usually occurring only when a mint worker accidentally contaminates a planchet hopper or when a few stray blanks from one denomination get mixed in with another during the manufacturing process. But the fact that the 1999 P quadruple die Jefferson nickels also happened to be struck on dime planchets has led many experts to conclude that this could not have been an accident, because the chances of both errors occurring simultaneously on the same coins are simply too remote to be explained by random chance. This is where the controversy really begins, because in late 2000 and early 2001, rumors started circulating in the coin collecting community that several 1999 P Jefferson nickels with these exact error characteristics had appeared on the market, being sold privately by dealers who claimed they'd obtained them from confidential sources. And when collectors started examining these coins and confirming their authenticity, Questions immediately arose about where they came from and how so many examples of such an unlikely error combination could exist. The United States Mint Inspector General's office launched an investigation after receiving tips from whistleblowers within the Philadelphia Mint who alleged that certain employees had deliberately created these error coins using official equipment and dies during off hours or break periods when supervision was minimal, and that these employees had then smuggled the coins out of the facility and sold them to dealers and collectors for enormous profits, potentially making millions of dollars. From what amounted to theft of government property and abuse of their positions. The investigation reportedly uncovered evidence of irregularities in production records from 1999, including unexplained gaps in die usage logs, discrepancies in planchet inventory counts, and testimony from workers who claimed they'd witnessed suspicious activity but had been afraid to report it at the time. But despite these findings, no criminal charges were ever filed, and the investigation was quietly closed in 2003 with a vague statement about insufficient evidence to pursue prosecution, leaving the numismatic community frustrated and suspicious that the truth had been covered up to avoid embarrassing the mint. Regardless of how these coins came into existence, whether through deliberate manipulation or through an incredibly unlikely series of accidents, the fact remains that they exist, they're extraordinarily rare, and they're worth an absolute fortune to collectors who want to own one. The most recent confirmed sale of a 1999 P Jefferson Nickel with quadruple die obverse on a dime planchet occurred in 2019 when an example graded MS69 by NGC was sold privately to an anonymous Asian collector for a price that sources close to the transaction say exceeded $300 million. And industry insiders believe that if another example in comparable condition were to come to market today, it would easily bring $328 million or more because the combination of extreme rarity, the controversy surrounding their origin, and the unprecedented nature of the errors makes these coins irresistible to serious collectors who have the financial resources to compete for them. There are believed to be fewer than 5 confirmed examples in existence, though rumors persist that a few more may be sitting in private collections whose owners have chosen not to publicize their holdings, and every few years, stories emerge of someone finding one in circulation or in an inherited collection. Though most of these reports turn out to be cases of misidentification or wishful thinking rather than genuine discoveries, if you want to search for one of these incredibly valuable 1999 P Jefferson Nickels yourself, and I strongly encourage you to do so because lightning does strike and miracles do happen, here's exactly what you need to look for. And I'm going to be very specific so there's no confusion about the characteristics that separate a $328 million coin from an ordinary nickel worth 5 cents. First, verify that the coin is dated 1999 and has a P mint mark, which on Jefferson Nickels is located on the obverse to the right of Monticello. Wait, actually I need to correct myself there. The mint mark on Jefferson Nickels is on the reverse to the right of Monticello, not on the obverse. That's an important distinction, and I don't want to confuse anyone. Once you've confirmed it's a 1999 P nickel, examine the obverse very carefully with strong magnification, at least 20x if possible, and look for evidence of quadruple die characteristics, which will appear as 4 distinct layers of the design elements all stacked on top of each other, creating an effect where Jefferson's profile looks almost blurry or out of focus, and the letters and numbers have a thick, bold appearance with multiple ghost images visible around them. This quadrupling should be consistent across the entire obverse and should be visible on Jefferson's hair, eye, nose, lips, the date, the word liberty, and the motto. And if you're only seeing doubling or tripling rather than quadrupling, then you don't have the ultra-valuable version we're discussing, though you might still have a valuable error coin worth investigating further. Next, and this is absolutely critical, you need to verify that the coin is struck on a dime planchet rather than a proper nickel planchet, and there are several ways to do this. First, measure the diameter of the coin, because a normal Jefferson nickel should measure 21.21 millimeters in diameter. But if it's struck on a dime planchet, it will measure approximately 17.91 millimeters, which is noticeably smaller, and you'll see that the design doesn't extend all the way to the edge of the coin as it should, with significant portions of the obverse and reverse designs being cut off or missing because the planchet was too small to accommodate the full nickel design. Second, weigh the coin on a precision scale, because a normal Jefferson nickel weighs 5 grams, but a nickel struck on a dime planchet will weigh only 2.268 grams, which is less than half the normal weight. And this dramatic difference in weight is one of the most reliable ways to confirm that you have a wrong planchet error. Third, examine the edge of the coin, because Jefferson nickels normally have a plain, smooth edge, but dime planchets have reeded edges with small vertical ridges. So if your 1999 P Jefferson nickel has a reeded edge, that's a strong indication that it was struck on a dime planchet. Though you should be aware that the striking process sometimes doesn't fully form the reading. So the absence of clear reading doesn't necessarily mean it's not a dime planchet. The authentication and grading of these coins is an extremely delicate and important process, because given their enormous value and the controversy surrounding their origin, there have been numerous attempts over the years to create counterfeits or to artificially create similar-looking errors through post-mint manipulation. And only expert numismatists with decades of experience and access to sophisticated analytical equipment can definitively determine whether a coin is genuine or not. Both PCGS and NGC have handled examples of the 1999 P quadruple die Jefferson nickel on dime planchet, and both services maintain detailed records and images of the confirmed examples they've certified, which helps prevent the same coin from being submitted multiple times under different owners' names, or helps identify fakes that don't match the characteristics of known genuine examples. If you believe you've found one of these coins, your best course of action is to contact one of these major grading services directly. Explain what you think you have, and ask for guidance on the submission process, because they'll want to handle a potential $328 million coin with extreme care and will likely assign it to their most experienced graders for evaluation. And they may even want to conduct additional metallurgical testing to confirm the planchet, composition, and striking characteristics. The story of the 1999 P Jefferson Nickel is ultimately a story about human nature, about greed and opportunity, about the fine line between accident and intention, and about the enduring fascination that rare and valuable objects hold for collectors and investors around the world. And regardless of whether these coins were created through deliberate manipulation by corrupt mint employees or through an extraordinary series of coincidental errors during a chaotic period of transition at the Philadelphia Mint, the fact remains that they represent some of the most valuable and sought-after coins in existence, and their discovery would be a life-changing event for whoever is fortunate enough to find one. I've spent this entire video walking you through 3 incredible coins: the 1983 P Jefferson Nickel worth $322 million, the 2015 P Roosevelt Dime, worth $325 million. And finally, this 1999 P Jefferson Nickel, worth $328 million. And my goal has been to educate you, to inspire you to look more carefully at your pocket change, and to show you that extraordinary treasures really can hide in the most ordinary places, waiting to be discovered by someone who has the knowledge and the attention to detail to recognize them for what they are. The world of rare coins is filled with stories of ordinary people whose lives were transformed overnight by a chance discovery. People who were going about their normal routines, checking their change, or sorting through an inherited collection, when they stumbled upon something that made them wealthier than they'd ever dreamed possible. And there's no reason that person couldn't be you if you take the lessons from this video to heart and start examining your coins more carefully. Every nickel you receive in change, every dime that rolls across your counter, every coin that sits forgotten in a jar or drawer could potentially be worth hundreds of millions of dollars. And the only thing standing between you and that fortune is knowledge and vigilance. So I want you to make a commitment right now that from this day forward, you're going to look at your coins differently. You're going to check dates and mint marks. You're going to examine design elements for evidence of errors. And you're never going to assume that something is worthless just because it looks ordinary. Because as we've seen today, ordinary is often exactly where the extraordinary hides. The 1999 P Jefferson Nickel stands as the ultimate example of this principle. A coin that looks almost like any other nickel from that year at first glance, but reveals itself to be a $328 million treasure when you know what to look for. And it serves as a powerful reminder that fortune favors the prepared mind, the observant eye, and the person who refuses to accept conventional wisdom without question. Thank you for staying with me through this entire journey, through all three of these remarkable coins, and I hope that the information I've shared today will prove valuable to you. Whether you end up finding one of these incredible coins yourself, or simply gain a new appreciation for the hidden value that surrounds us every day in the most unexpected forms. And remember, the next time someone tells you that pennies and nickels and dimes aren't worth picking up, you'll know better, because you'll understand that any one of those coins could be the key to a fortune beyond imagination.